Hello, hello, hello. I am Zachary Fennell, the Cerebral Palsy Vigilante. And with me, I want to welcome back another person with cerebral palsy who also happens to be a fitness enthusiast. Actually, it's the other way around. He's a fitness enthusiast who also happens to have cerebral palsy. Daryl Perry, welcome back. Thanks for joining me today. I'm excited for the conversation we're going to have because we've talked a lot over the years, but I feel we haven't talked about this subject that we're about to talk about. And I hope it doesn't fall short of expectation.
For those of you not watching the video, I just did the bumps drum thing because yeah, we're talking about falling, something we know a lot about.
Yes, cerebral palsy leaves you more prone to falling, and which let's just get right into it. So, how often would you say you fall?
I would still say I would still say probably 3 to 5 times a month. I would say that a weekly fall is probably online for me now. As an adult, I will say that I have fallen so many times in my life. I do feel like one, I can catch myself before I go completely down. I do think the way that CP impacts my body, that since my upper body, even though it's affected, is still like I can still catch myself a lot of times. And then, but when I can't, I kind of have learned how to like fall and kind of roll a little bit so I don't take the brunt of it. But it's still a really common thing, and I do a lot of work for flexibility and mobility and do the things that I can to take care of myself. But like I still fall a lot.
There's a couple of different things I want to get to and what you had said there to unpack. I guess first to clarify, uh, constituting what a fall is. I don't because there's those times where you drag your foot. You At least for me, it's like you drag your foot, you stumble, and then you just kind of take a couple of wild steps and catch your balance. There are other times where you kind of, you're going to you're tired, whatever, you trip over your own foot, and then you kind of just, bounce back by, you stumble into a wall to get yourself up. So when you, like for you, is a fall, when you say 3 to 5 times a month, would that be that is that falling to the ground or onto something, or is
That is
that,
that is I'm glad you asked this for clarification because I didn't even think about it this way. When I say I'm falling, that is me hitting the ground. Now, as far as man, like as far as the other stuff that you're talking about, like just losing my balance, being able to to catch myself and regroup, oh my gosh, there are probably a couple of instances of that. I would say almost daily, and that sometimes, and you mentioned like when I'm tired and things, I now know that like if I'm going to be at a shopping mall, um, the down escalator is fine if I'm not fatigued. If I'm fatigued, especially if it's a really wide one where I can't grab onto both sides, I'm liable to trip over my feet. And I actually did that in an airport once. I like at a top of a really big escalator. I stumbled over my foot a little bit, and I'm like, okay, I don't want to do that again. So like if I'm tired, a lot of times I'm looking for elevators now, more so than I used to. But by the same token, I know this is slightly off topic. I still like to go down steps when I can, use escalators as well. I try to use as many, I guess, types of however I can move. I try to do it because I try to be able to. I want to keep my coordination and my balance as best as I can. I will say, like in the last handful of years, though, I've noticed that I'm my balance is not as good as it used to be. And I think that's just part of aging with CP.
Once again, there's just I feel like there's 4 different directions I could go off to what you just said. You brought up escalators, which is really funny because in hashtag CP chat now, the chat I co-host that is now on Blue Sky every Wednesday. Escalators have been kind of like a running joke because a lot of us just don't like them in the group. We avoid them because because of what you're saying. They're just, for me, an escalator is always about, like, I get nervous about stepping off at the wrong point, and then, like, again, that creates a fall. So while it's off subject of falling, it's really not at the same time because that's an environment that can cause a fall. And you mentioned like I personally will always, I like stairs over elevators, and then I will go stairs, elevator, and then jump out a window, and then escalator. That last the window
Burning
jumping
building
thing
on
might be an
fire.
exaggeration.
Yeah, yeah. Burning building on fire, jumping out, rolling to the ground, getting the fire out, and then underneath that somewhere is escalator. Now
Yes.
I totally get it. I mean, like in the stairs. So like I try to do the stairs because that is a movement pattern I don't want to lose. And it's like there are times depending on where I'm at, like if they're really steep stairs, I do have to go like one step at a time, like left foot down, right foot on the same step. I try to do one step per foot and go down one at a time because again, it's something that I don't want to lose. But like, yeah, I started paying more attention to environmental hazards that could lead to falls. I guess more so in recent years. Before that, I was just falling. I'm like, well, this is just part of what it is. And I do feel like to some extent, I think we just are like, well, I know my balance is I'm not going to say it. My balance is bad. So like, I kind of would just figure that I would fall. But yes, I'm now more proactive in looking at the environment and trying to take things into consideration before I, and however it is that I'm moving. So I don't fall.
And that really gets into one of the subjects and questions I had for you that I wanted to talk about, and that is what preparations in the past or from activities you currently do you feel have helped you to handle fall?
So I will say that something I do at least once a day, and sometimes more, is I will go from one end in one part of my place. It's in a room, in my living room. It's like going from one end of a long couch to another. But I will go down side to, like laterally, and so I'll go down to one side, and then I'll come back, and then I'll also start at one end of the couch and walk backwards, then walk forward, and then backwards. And I'll do that 2 times each because what I found is I, even when I was like walking for exercise, well, I wasn't doing a lot of lateral movements or moving backwards. So something that I used to kind of do, I was never, I mean, it was always impacted by my CP, but like, going backwards, like when I was playing sports and stuff, was never an issue. And then it was like, I tried to go backwards one day as an adult, and I couldn't hardly, like, I couldn't really move in that direction. So I do all kinds of like, I will say that's something that's changed with my workouts over, probably more recently even than the last year or so, is I'm trying to mimic the different movements that I'm doing in day-to-day life. So as far as preparing, that's really what I spend the first 15 to 25, 30 minutes of my morning doing, just trying to get ready for the day and trying to mimic what might be different types of movement that I got to do.
almost like you're creating or building muscle memory. So in the occasion you do, when you do lose your balance, that and you're finding yourself falling, going, headed backwards, your body goes, okay, we did this morning, and it kind of helps helps you a little bit to prevent falls or make the fall not as bad. I know a memorable fall for me was when I was in elementary school as a young kid. In the We both are located in Ohio. We so for me and where I am, the Cleveland winters, the snow on the ground and everything. Coming into the elementary school, my parents, teachers always say, wipe your feet on the mat before you go into the school because it's like this linoleum floor or whatever.
Yeah.
I was just, well, what if I don't? And so I took a step, fell, gave myself a concussion, and that summer I spent with my physical therapist learning to fall. And that was to this day, that I would say is probably the most beneficial thing I ever did in physical therapy. It was all very beneficial to be where I'm at today. The foundation all goes back to the physical therapy I had. But with falling, it's like when I do fall, it became so automatic. There is just a certain dynamic of controlling your body when you fall, so that you're going down arm first to brace yourself, and you're not clunking your head the against the sidewalk or whatever you're falling on. Did you go through anything like that in physical therapy when you were growing up?
So I don't remember actually learning to fall in physical therapy. That would have been an amazing place to do it. And we might have, I just might not remember it. Um, because you have like all the mats and it would actually just be a
Yeah.
soft place to land. Um, when you talk about learning to fall, and this when we were talking about preparing for the day and stuff like this, it got me thinking. I'm like I startle very easily, and when I startle, it's very painful. There is some level when I'm about to fall that I actually do calm myself down a little bit. Now, this is one of the only like one. Normally, if I jump and I feel like my entire insides are like twisting up like a pretzel, and it hurts. In this case, I kind of it's like I've done this so many times before. I know how to fall. Like it just is what it is. I mean, do you have that kind of reaction when you're startled? Is being startled a real painful thing for you? And is it in well, just I guess answer that. This is gonna be my one question. Yes, this will be my one.
This is a conversation. We're supposed to be
Yeah,
back and forth, and
yeah,
I hope that for the people viewing, that our back and forth is valuable. This is a conversation. Also want them to chime in. So if you're down there in the comments, and answer for us too about what you do to help prevent falls, or what you've done in the past. Did you learn to fall in physical therapy when you were younger, or are you young now, and is that something that you've done in physical therapy? Let us know in the comments. I'll make sure to also share whatever comments I get with Daryl, so he can get the feedback as well. But getting to your question, Daryl, uh, I startle, but I have never really considered it like a painful experience. It's
yeah,
just been more of like I wasn't expecting that surprise,
yeah.
and then just gather yourself. So it doesn't, it hasn't created like uh, you know, pain for me. So it's interesting always to talk to someone and understand how our CPs are different, or just how we react differently to the same symptom, for a better lack of
It's
better.
Well, and it is fascinating, and this will be. I'm glad you called it out for the comments on the last, in the last statement, because I think this would also be. Anything we talk about is open for discussion. But the reason I ask that is because I've heard it from both ways. I always thought because things being startled was painful for me. I was like, oh, that must be a CP thing. I've talked to people though where, like you're saying, it's not really a painful thing; it just kind of happens. And I've talked to other people that are like, absolutely, from head to toe, like I clench up and it's very painful. So, um, yeah, and this I think is the one of the great things about these conversations that you and I have, because again, we're talking about things that you mentioned it here. We haven't actually talked about this topic, but it's something we deal with all the time. And I think opening this up as a discussion, not only between you and I, but for anybody that watches or listens to this, like it puts a lot of brings a lot of context and color to it, which I think is really really neat.
And you just talking about like startling. I know one thing besides the pain, the physical pain that some people feel from it, is, for lack of a better term, emotional pain, where it's almost like like if you startle in front of someone, that you get embarrassed for being jumpy, which kind of leads into a question I had for you about with falls, because it's similar with falls as well. You know, and it's one thing when a kid falls, it's like, oh, that's a kid, but when an adult falls, what is that inner dialogue like inside your head when you do fall?
You know, it really it's not something that when I saw this question, I'm like, it's interesting, and because I'm really big on inner dialogue, I don't have a real negative one around this, and I can actually give you a really good example. I had I'm more than a fitness enthusiast. I've been a certified personal trainer for a long time, for like 15 years, and I've worked both virtually and also in person. In person, I was working at a studio, and I had just started at this particular studio not too long before this, and we were doing like it was like an obstacle course thing, and one of the obstacles was a wheelbarrow. So we're demonstrating how to do this. Now, this wheelbarrow, the wheel was flat, but I was trying to balance it and move forward, and it had bricks in it, and the wheelbarrow went one way and I went the other. And it was one of those falls where like my feet went up in the air. So here I am. I'm on staff as one of the trainers, and and I've got people like looking at me. And, it's like the thing I remember about this, I was momentarily embarrassed. I'm not going to say that I wasn't, but I had collected myself enough to where I just got up and I was like, I'm okay. And I like flashed a smile. I didn't, I, I didn't crack a joke at my expense. I really, cause I used to do that a lot. Like the whole, if I'm the butt of the joke, if I'm making the joke, they're laughing with me and not at me. As I got older, I really tried to get away from doing that because I just didn't want to be the butt of anybody's joke, even my own. Um, but like the inner dialogue, I really, and I like what you said, because you and I were having a conversation. You were talking about trying to be present moment on a lot of things. I really try to appreciate what my body does. I really, so like, to me, it's a given that I'm going to fall, but the internal dialogue is anything broken? Okay. If nothing's broken, I think we're good. So, but yeah, it's fascinating that you asked that. But for me, it's pretty positive, I think.
I'm glad that within your response, it really made me think of it's a couple of different things. Because when I was younger, it was that level of, oh, almost like the head, like to feel embarrassed about falling, and then it's like over time you kind of learn to, just to move on. I remember when I was when I was 19, I had a birthday party, and friends and I were walking up to my old elementary school to just kind of like hang out on the playground. And then when on our way back to my place, I tripped and fell, and I just, got up, dusted myself off, and moved forward. Not too like, just saying I'm okay. And then there are times like in college when a few years later, I had like, and this kind of goes to where you're not being the butt of anyone's joke. Sometimes it's like maybe you can find humor in the outlying situation. I was Notre Dame College. I went to. I'm glad I got to be a part of their 100 plus year history. Um, they were a dry campus, so you weren't allowed to have alcohol on campus. I walked into the dining hall one day. There's a wet floor sign, and the sign, and there, but I still managed to like take a step and fall, and instead of cracking a joke at myself, I just yelled out "dry campus my ass," and then that got a bunch of people laughing, and it takes away from the fall. People are laughing, but they're not laughing at me. They're laughing at the humor of the situation. And I mean, that's, of course, when you fall, you're not always going to have that wit to right away be able to crack a joke about the environment. But then there's the times where it's like how people react. You talked about assessing your body. Is anything broken? That's my same process. As soon as I go down, I just kind of like pull myself up. I like shift my weight. Okay, am I good to go, or is there something lingering? I've done the towpath marathon, as you know, if anyone's watching this for the first time through finding this topic. I've done the towpath marathon. I walked 26.2 miles in both 2017 and 2018. Both times I ended up falling twice within those 26.2 miles. My first time I fell, the friend I was with, as he goes, "Oh crap!" and he panics. He goes to grab me and pick me up. I go, "No," and like really defiant, and like so we had like as we were moving, we kind of was a little tense, and he was just like, "Well, I'm just trying to help," and I understand that, but I have to do this assessment of myself to make sure I'm okay. You're trying to help. Now, what if I would have injured my ankle? Picking me up and putting me back on my foot, would that be helping? And James was like, no. So I went ahead and that second time I fell in 2017, James did. He just goes like, what can I do to help?
Yeah.
And that was like to me one of the coolest things about that half a day I spent walking to become a marathoner was James kind of like learning from that first fall and be like, okay, how can I help? And that gets into just the question I had for you, and relating to that is, what advice do you have to people with cerebral palsy with regards to falling? And in relation to that, what about for their loved ones and family members, friends who see someone fall and they have that instinct to help? What advice would you have for them as well?
So for those that have CP, do just what you and I have talked about. You're going to do an internal assessment. Now, we're talking about two different approaches here. I've had people try to help me up, and I have in a calmer tone been like, "No, I'm okay." Before I even know if I am or not, give me a minute.
Yeah.
I've also heard. I mean, I know somebody that when they fell, the response was, "Don't touch me." Like, so you're gonna get you're gonna get different responses across the board. Um, but like, do what you need to do to check yourself out first. One thing that I will suggest, and this is really hard to do, and I turned this down. I was traveling this past weekend, and I turned this down twice. I'm trying to get better. Um, I was when people say that they're going to help, let them help you. If it's going to make the situation easier for you, let people help. I lived the I'm independent. Nobody needs to help me. I can navigate the world the way that I need to navigate it. I did that for most of my life. And I still, Zach and I could go out after this. I could be in a situation where somebody offers me help and I'd look at them and could clearly need the help. And I'd be like, I'm good. So I'm not saying that I need to work on this too. But I think as we get older, we realize that, you know what? If people are willing to help us, let them help us. We need to do what we need to do to make sure that we're taken care of. So in the moment when we fall, we have to do our assessment. But for those with CP, if people are saying that they're going to help, that they're willing to help you, let them do it some of the time. For those of you that are friends and family and have loved ones with CP, I understand the urges. You want to jump in right away. But again, give them time to do their self-assessment. I also love the story you said about your friend James and the difference between how he reacted after the first fall and the second fall. You want to help, but again, when we have CP and we're trying to navigate life, we have made our entire life, we've had to figure out how to do things our way, which again, doesn't help with the stubbornness of I'm going to do it all my own. But there are some things that we figured out that work best for us that we might just need to do without you helping right away. But like what you said with James, he asked you, how can I help? That always, especially after 3 to 5 seconds, ask if there's anything you can do. That is probably the best way to approach it.
It's almost like the best approach after a fall is because I'm that whole don't touch me, or the way I responded to James, no. That first thing is frustration that I felt oh, I should have been more focused, and in that, so I beat myself up, maybe trying to be too accountable for my own actions. So it's almost like you fall. The first thing you need to do is take a deep breath, and then so that way it lets you calm down a little bit. You're not lashing out at someone who's trying to help, and sometimes again, this is another great topic to weigh in about in the comments. Is some people, it's not the same as falling. I know some people in wheelchairs who've have had someone oh, let me push you, and they just grab the chair and start moving them, and that's not okay. That's not helping. That is taking somebody's mobility and putting it in your hands, and that's not cool. But I do think when it comes to falls, that that deep breath might be able to something that help create calm discussion about how can you help. Sometimes it's about helping yourself. When I did the marathons, I used my cane for it. And I was really struggled the first time around while I was training for my marathon to get okay with using a cane, because it was just something I wasn't using. I don't use my cane every day, so I shouldn't need it for the marathon. And then when I kept falling 10 plus miles in, I kind of came to the realization that, at that point, 10 miles in, I just, I'm risking too much injury by not using the cane. And that whole well, I don't use it every day. It's not every day you walk 26.2 miles. So it's okay on that special occasion. Sometimes you just have to find a way to help yourself.
I think that's, and I think what we're talking about here, definitely advocate for yourself. but also whether it's getting assistance from other people or using devices or tools that can assist you. Um, where I feel like every person I've ever talked to that has CP, we have our freedom, we have our mobility to whatever extent, and I'll be damned, we never want to lose it, and we will fight for it. But we do get very stubborn sometimes. So, like, if you're, you know, I don't use the cane every day. I'm not going to use it for this. Well, maybe I should use it for this. Um, and everybody's situation with that is going to be different. You know, I I have found even when I'm just out at whether it's a zoo or a shopping mall or an airport, I mentioned that before. It's amazing to me if I sit down for even 20 to 30 seconds, just taking a quick break and then getting up and moving again, how helpful that's been. And for the longest time, I just would try to move nonstop. And it would, I mean, I would start sweating after, it didn't matter what the weather was. In the summer, it was awful. But you get like 10 to 15 minutes in, and I'm just like, I'm overheated. I'm sweating. I'm overexerting myself. And then after sweating the entire day, whatever it was that I was doing, I was completely wiped out physically. And what I have figured out, I don't know if I've talked to you about this, or I might have, but last summer, Heather and I took we went to the zoo with everybody, and it was like a 96-degree day, and we were there for 4 hours. And what I was doing was, because they had so much seating, we were at the Philadelphia Zoo, and they had so much seating there that I could just like sit as often as I wanted. And I was surprised that after like a 3.5, 4 hour visit, I wasn't nearly as fatigued as I usually am if I go for like 45 minutes to an hour. So, like, in my case, I'm thinking, oh my gosh, this has been the way to do all this stuff has been in front of my face the entire time. Like, I've tried to be active my entire life, and it's just like, take a very quick break every few minutes. And it helps. So, but yeah, I mean, we have to adapt. We have to do things differently at times. And eventually, like, we're going to need assistance with things. So, whether that's from people or from devices. So be open to it.
And I think that's, what you just shared is fascinating. You had mentioned that before about just how, sitting for a little bit and then getting up was, it kind of kept you refreshed. And like I said, you're not as fatigued as you go throughout the day. The less, one of the um, factors that can lead to a fall is fatigue, because your body starts getting tired. You're not moving the same way as you would if you were fresh, which can lead to you dragging your toe or tripping over your own feet or missing that um, that slight lip up in the walkway. And it's also, this video is titled "Falling with Cerebral Palsy," but also everyone falls. The fall that I had that kind of scared me into using my cane was, I back in 2016, my mom had fallen. My mom doesn't have physical disability or anything. Was out walking with my dad, tripped over the different height in cement. I would call it in my I relate to the sidewalks as an obstacle course in my marathon memoir, Slow and Cerebral, and I call it the invisible step, because to the naked eye you don't see it, but being so much cerebral palsy, knowing you have to pay more attention, you can kind of like, there's that's that lip up, and if you're not lifting your foot far enough, boom, you trip and fall.
Yeah.
So my mom ended up falling, and she's never been the same since, because she had she had like fractured the humerus in her shoulder, and then she dealt with a frozen shoulder, and even to this day she had never got like full strength, like full range in the
Yeah.
use of her shoulder back. And so I had this fall where I almost like did like a drunk somersault forward and like over my right shoulder, and I realizing how serious a shoulder injury could be. Like thankfully, I was like I managed to not hurt myself, but I knew that was close, and that was the fall that led me to decide, you know what, I'm gonna use my cane for this.
Yeah. Yeah. No, we I think we all get there, but it takes actual experiences for us to kind of look at it and weigh things out and say, you know what, it's not worth it. I'm going to do this instead. So I totally get that.
And I mean, I feel like we could go. We've been talking for over 35 minutes now. I think we could go another 35 talking about falls, but I always try to keep my content to a shorter and sweeter. So maybe we can do another a video on this to continue the conversation another time. But in before we do that, before we bring this conversation to the close, I did want to give you the floor, Daryl, to share any thoughts on the subject, insights on the subject of falling that we haven't covered today that you feel are worth mentioning today?
I think we did a really thorough job of covering most things with falling. I think the only thing, because we've talked about our past history of falling, how we fall now, the only thing we haven't really talked about is the future. And this is the one thing for me um, I'm nervous about, because you hear a lot that that's how, when people, as they age, people in general, they'll have a fall and there'll be a bone break or there'll be something, and they might have been very active before, and this takes away their active lifestyle suddenly, and then healing doesn't come nearly as quick as it would have in younger ages. And I just, with the frequency of how much I fall, I am trying to prepare my body as best I can as I age, but I'm also very nervous about it too. So for me, like how I handle this stuff in the future is something that's on my mind a lot.
All right. And is there anything in particular that you do that keeps you from like stressing out too much about it to the point where you're giving yourself anxiety, or kind of looking at the future with a doom and gloom outlook? Is there anything particular that you do to just kind of be like, no, this is ahead of me,
Yeah.
but maybe,
Yeah.
you know what I'm saying?
I,
Like, how do
I
you,
do.
knowing that's ahead, or that what not the uncertainty that lays ahead with your body? Is there anything you do to kind of keep yourself from getting
So
anxious?
I knew you weren't going to let us down with this. You come up with a question that could lead to an entirely different episode, and I think it is an optimistic outlook on life with cerebral palsy. Um, ultimately, I think you just have to trust that you're going to do everything you can to take care of yourself, and you're going to take the assistance that you need. You're going to work to make sure that you're giving yourself the best quality of life that you can, so that you don't get stuck in your own head. It's easy to get caught up on your thoughts. It's easy to worry. It's easy to have anxiety. And if you are anxious or have a fear around how this is going to go now or into the future, it's totally understandable. I will say, for me personally, I I will make jokes on social media every so often. I have like a lifetime scoreboard, and it's like Daryl 7,937,232, cerebral palsy 3. I know that for my entire life, I'm going against this condition. I like to say that I'm trying to work in tandem with myself at all times, but in reality, I feel like I'm having to navigate CP, and I'm not going to allow it to win. So again, I think if you are in your head about it, um, you know, I understand it, and there's a lot of layers to it. And we were going to see if I could get through some content without recommending people go to try therapy if they haven't tried it. Um, I think that could be something helpful if you are very anxious about the future of your life with CP and your future around falling, because I mean it's a very real fear. But again, I don't think any of us want to be in the mental prison around this diagnosis that we have and this condition that we have. So if I were to start to feel the fear and the anxiousness, which totally could happen, I would do everything in my power to sidestep it. And the way that I sidestep stuff like that is I just do the activities that I would be afraid of. So like get comfortable falling, continue to be comfortable falling because I do it all the time. But I mean, just try to do the activities. Try not to live in fear. Do a lot of what you talk about, which is try to be present, because the present is what I can control. The present is going to be what leads to the future. But worrying about the future is only going to stress me out about things that may or may not happen. So.
Very much one of the lessons I learned through my marathon training and becoming a marathoner is control what you can control. And I think with that, we'll let the reader or the viewer decide what they want, control what they want to control. Go ahead. I hope if you've watched this far, it probably means you've liked the video. So hit the thumbs up icon to let YouTube and the world know that you like this video. If again, feedback on anything, whether it's like what you do to prep to prevent falls, or a good fall story that you want to share, leave those in the comments. And you on screen, you can see the Instagram handles for both Daryl and I highly recommend following Daryl on Instagram if you're not already. He posts some great stuff daily, motivational stuff with substance, not just motivational quotes that is empty motivational quotes for the sake of it, but actual substance quotes. Uh, I'm on Instagram as well. I'm got if you want more content from me besides Instagram and you've liked this video, stuff like this, make sure you have subscribed to my YouTube channel and then hit the bell icon to be notified every time I publish a new video. And until next time, remember, don't blend in. Do it with me, Daryl. Blend out.